I'm an intuitive eating counsellor and personal trainer.
So what got you into fitness?
Since I can remember, I always loved being active. I just knew that that was going to be part of my career, really. So it wasn't until the very last lecture at uni, one lady just said, I'm a personal trainer, and I was like, that is it.
You mentioned intuitive eating counsellor. What does that mean?
I was a dieter for about 10 years. My weight was fluctuating, my hormones were not in balance, and through my own research I came across intuitive eating. It allows all foods to be part of your diet so you can understand what foods feel good for you.
How do you go about losing fat with this framework?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Is there any sort of guidance on the type of food that you should eat?
We really do encourage a balanced diet and really moving away from any sort of restricting food groups. Our bodies do really respond well to kind of whole foods, but really making sure that you're flexible with this, and life happens. If there's times when you do have to have processed foods, then absolutely allow them to be part of it as well.
And then how can someone be a good personal trainer?
I think it's creating a safe, non-judgmental space for people to exercising.
And then what makes someone a good client?
I think if clients are open to really seeing nutrition, movement as a long-term part of their life, so they really get that. I love working with clients like that. That's for me.
I really like.
Joe, ask the last question.
What would you want written on your tombstone?
Oh God, that is a really good question. I've never thought about this before.
Welcome to Last Neanderthals podcast. Today we have a special guest, Áine Harkin. How are you?
Really well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Great to be here.
Thank you for coming on. Would you like to tell us more about yourself?
Of course, yeah. So I'm an intuitive eating counsellor and personal trainer, and I help my clients to build a positive relationship with food and their bodies through nourishing their bodies well and moving well.
Yeah, I mean, you have changed my parents' lives. I've been telling them throughout the years, they, growing up in Pakistan, they didn't know about diet, health, things of that nature. Yeah. And you've completely, transformed their lives. So first of all, I thank you. And so what got you into fitness yourself?
Yeah, so since I can remember, I absolutely always loved being active. I just loved all things sport at school. So PE was my first and foremost lesson that I just loved. And yeah, I just knew that that was going to be part of my career, really. So I always chose PE for GCSE, A-level, sports at uni. But really, it wasn't until the very last lecture at uni that they invited past students along just to share with us what they'd done with their degree. And one lady just said, I'm a personal trainer. And I was like, it was just a light bulb. I was like, that is it. So I spoke to her after. I was like, that is definitely, I love working with people, particularly one-to-one. So yeah, I just banked that idea, went traveling for a year, come back and qualified straight away. Yeah, so that's where it all began. Yeah.
You mentioned intuitive eating counsellor.
Yes.
For everyone listening, what does that mean?
Yeah, so intuitive eating. So I was a dieter for, I'd say, about 10 years. So I was on this kind of binge restriction cycle for a long time, and my weight was fluctuating, my hormones were not in balance, my energy was low, and I never seemed to be happy with my body or really happy with my relationship with food. And through my own research, I came across intuitive eating, and it's really a self-care eating framework, and it allows you to really connect to your own hunger and fullness cues. It allows all foods to be part of your diet so you can actually start to really understand what foods feel good for you and not follow the kind of good, bad food labeling or you should and shouldn't eat it. So it's really from the inside out rather than following strict rules from the outside in, really. Yeah.
So it's a lot more personalized way.
Yeah, so personal. And another way I describe it is that we're all born like intuitive eaters. So when we're babies, we just cry, we get fed, and then we stop eating, no issue, carry on. And there's no kind of mental chatter about what we've just eaten. And then we obviously we start growing up, and there's cultural influences, obviously diet culture comes into it, and that kind of brings us away from our innate wisdom that we're really born with. So what I say intuitive eating is it's almost like you're rediscovering your intuitive eater that's there, that's been just blunted by diet culture and rules.
So a lot of people, their aim is to, lose their fat, lessen their weight. With intuitive eating, how does, like we've been taught like calories in and calories out. How can you really know that, if you listen to your intuitive eating for long enough, that you'll start losing fat? Like, how do you go about losing fat with this framework?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So intuitive eating it's weight neutral, and we always focus on, first and foremost, you listen to your intuition. So that's always leading your food choices. And it then helps you achieve your natural set point weight. So it's really important when you come on the intuitive eating journey, aiming to rediscover your intuitive eater, is letting go of any sort of weight loss or any sort of goal of weight loss, because the aim is to really help you arrive at your natural weight. And yeah, so that's, once you achieve that, you can then make choices from your intuition and not from rules, because that's very, very external. And that's why I really try and move people away from weighing themselves, because again, our weights do fluctuate. And actually, a big learning for me in my intuitive eating journey was that I had a goal weight that I wanted to be on the scales, but that wasn't actually my natural set point weight. So I was always working against my body. So really, when you start on your intuitive eating journey, you have to really accept that actually you may lose weight, you may stay stable, you may even gain a bit of weight. I've had clients do that because they've actually been eating less. So yeah, I think that's really key when it comes to intuitive eating. It's a really balanced approach to eating, movement, and building that positive relationship with your body and your natural weight, your genetic blueprint. So
I think it's really interesting because it's so different to what we've been taught about weight loss and like health and fitness in general. But as you said to us earlier, the main focus is on health rather than the weight. And I mean, for us, we've been able to see that it works because you've worked with Tribale's parents, and both of them are like a lot more healthy now than before. So it is like, it's crazy to think that we've been taught this one rule set, but this new idea that you're presenting to us, it might not be new in the grand scheme of things, but for us it is, and it does clearly work. But I wonder then, if someone is, let's say, like morbidly overweight, if they're like, let's say 150 kilograms, does this then work for them as well?
Yeah, it would as well, because when you do start to listen to your hunger and fullness cues, your body will settle at its natural set point weight. Now, someone who is morbidly obese, or it would be definitely worth looking at their relationship with food and their eating habits, because sometimes a kind of loose structure of eating can help, like encourage, I suppose, a healthier way of living. But it really can help bring them back. I think another thing to remember as well with the intuitive eating journey is that when you do start restricting or controlling food, it really can affect your hormone levels. So your hunger and fullness hormones, so ghrelin and leptin, they're altered when you start dieting. And I found this as soon as I started dieting, it was almost overnight. All of a sudden, I was getting cravings I'd never, ever had before. I was really occupied by food. Food was very much in my mind, again, so much more than it had been before. And it's known that this is a very natural response from our bodies when it experiences restriction. It's trying to keep us safe all the time. It's always it's on our side. So we can be quite annoyed, say like, why am I experiencing these cravings? I should be restricted. I should be able to do it. But actually it's our body's way of just keeping us safe and thinking, right, I need to adapt to try and keep you in balance. So yeah. But so coming back to someone who's morbidly obese, absolutely can really help, because any way of bringing them back to their natural hunger and fullness cues, I use a really powerful tool with clients, and it's the hunger scale, and it's a scale simply 1 from 10, and you can work along it, and in any moment you can always connect to where you are on your hunger scale. So whether you're really, really hungry, absolutely stuffed, or whether you're kind of in the middle, and we always try and aim to kind of be in the middle of that scale. Yeah.
Could some people's intuition be incorrect though?
Sorry?
Could some people's intuition be like incorrect? Like, could that be one of the drawbacks? Because let's say if I think I'm hungry when I'm when it's more of like a kind of addictive craving, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm so used to eating, like, even though I'm not hungry, even though I don't need more food, but because, I don't know, like, I've got this bad relationship with food,
Yeah.
I still don't listen to my body. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think one thing that really helps with that is meditating. So there's a specific hunger, connected to your hunger meditations. So even before you eat, just taking a few minutes, a few breaths, closing your eyes and really connecting to your body. That's a really powerful way, particularly closing your eyes, because you can let go of all external distractions and really focus inwards to what your body needs in the moment. I think sometimes we can be, especially if we're coming off the back of any sort of restriction, it can take quite a while to really reconnect with that intuition, but it is there. It's just really taking the time to slow down and connect with it. But we've all got it, for sure. Yeah.
Because sometimes I have like this tendency to be a glutton.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
sometimes I have like 2 pieces of chicken and then I'm like, because it tastes so good, I'm like, although I'm not I'm full, I feel hungry. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah,
And I
definitely.
just
And
have another one.
yeah, I know, because in the moment. But I think another thing of which is so I loved about learning about intuitive eating is that our bodies are so clever. So say if one meal, you know, there might be a time where you do eat past your comfortable fullness, but it's really nice to get curious and be like, okay, I've done that now. How does my body feel for the rest of the day? In the evening, do I feel like I need like a meal again, or am I going to go a bit lighter? Generally, our bodies are really good at keeping us in balance, even from like day to day. Do you know, say if you have a really big meal in the evening, you may wake up in the morning and think, bit of a light breakfast now this morning. That's what I feel. Do you know, it's just almost like stepping back and letting our body just lead the way a bit rather than trying to control it, because it'll do it. Yeah, it knows what it's doing, for sure.
Before we move on to the next question, if someone wants to learn more about intuitive eating, where should they go?
Yeah, so there's so many. There's two authors. So they actually came up with the intuitive eating framework in '95, and it's Evelyn, Tribole and Elise, Resch, and that's who I qualified with. So they've got an intuitive eating book. They've got a couple actually, and they're really good. So I can recommend those to you. And also my website, I've got the intuitive eating principles there. On my social media, particularly on Instagram, I share a lot of content and videos on there, so they can go on there. Another thing I've got actually on my website is a 5-day free training, which is like an introduction to intuitive eating. So that's another. There's lots of options you can choose, but there's a lot out there that you can learn.
What's the website called?
It's aineharkin.com. So that's AINEHARKIN.com.
Okay, and we'll link that in the description.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, no worries.
I think you said you wanted to move on to the next question, but one thing I wanted to ask as well is there any sort of guidance on the type of food that you should eat as well, or is it just a free-for-all, you can have whatever?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question again. So there's 10 principles of intuitive eating, and the 10th one is gentle nutrition, which is where we bring in nutritional guidance. But it's really important, if you're coming off the back of any sort of restriction or dieting, it's really important to set that aside so you can really focus on building the positive relationship with food. So restriction isn't there, you've moved away from diet mentality, you're connecting to your hunger and fullness cues, and then you can bring on nutritional guidance as not as it's another diet to kind of latch onto, more rules. It's really coming from then intuition. But with intuitive eating, when it comes to nutrition, we really do encourage a balanced diet, and really moving away from any sort of restricting food groups, just making sure our body's in that balanced state all the time, because that's when it will perform best. And as I mentioned before, I mean, our bodies do really respond well to kind of whole foods, you know, as close to its natural state as possible, but really making sure that you're flexible with this. And, you know, life happens. If there's times when you do have to have processed foods, or play foods, we like to call them with intuitive eating, then absolutely allow them to be part of it as well. So, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Also, another question I had is, pretty much everyone knows that, you know, exercise is good for them, and it will reduce so many of their medical problems, like probably 90% that, you know, that they're trying to basically find a quick short-term relief with, you know, prescriptions by doctors or other means, right? How, like, although they know it's good, but so little, like very little amount of people stay consistent with it, or they find it extremely difficult to start working out.
Yes.
How can someone make that journey easy?
Yeah, there's quite a few things that I would say to this. And let's say the first one, I always encourage people to really start small. I think a big barrier for people can be that there's this thought that I need to be a gym member. I need to go to the gym for an hour, a few times a week. But actually that can be a barrier, and movement and exercise can be anything. Like, it really can be anything. You can do it at your home, your living room. If you're away in the hotel room, it can be outdoors, indoors. So I think it's really simplifying movement and not kind of putting it on this big pedestal that it has to be very structured and I need to work really hard every time I exercise. It's really allowing it to be a very natural kind of part of your life, so making movement much more natural. I think another reason is, I think people can be, say for like in January and New Year, people are always quite motivated maybe to start exercising or whatever it might be, start eating more healthy, whatever it might be. But I think it's the motivation aspect, and it's something I've learned personally as well. I think January might be really good to motivate you to start moving. You might get a new pair of trainers, that's a good motivator. But it's practicing, I think, moving when you're not feeling motivated. And I think that's absolutely key, because I found, for example, I love exercising in the morning, but when my alarm goes off at 5 o'clock, like, I'm not feeling really motivated. But I think it's practicing the habit of moving when you're not feeling motivated, because then that's going to be so consistent. Because really, I think I'm a few times I might feel really motivated to exercise, but not a lot of the time. So I think if you can think, right, if I keep waiting to be motivated to exercise, I probably won't do it much. So it's just knowing that actually feeling motivated doesn't need to stop you from moving your body. That makes sense.
Yeah, and it won't be consistent as well, because like you said, you won't always be motivated, and then when you're not motivated, you're just not going to do it. So if you learn to do it when you really don't want to, then nothing can really stop you.
It's so true, and it can be such a long-term part of your life then. I think another key thing, it's really connecting to your why and the reason why you want to start moving your body. And I really do, although weight loss is such a common goal for people and can get people into movement, as quick as I can, I try and move people away from using weight loss as a goal, because our weight does fluctuate, and there's lots of reasons for that. And I think if you're using weight as a motivator, it can be very sporadic. And I've been definitely like this, like on the weighing scales, one day I'm whatever it might be, and I think, well, okay, it's not worth it, or very up and down. But I think if you can gradually just lean away from that and focus on so many benefits of movement that aren't related to appearance or a number on a scale, you're on to a winner. I think it's going to be much more long term.
So I totally agree with that point. So I read this book called Atomic Habits.
Yes.
It talked about two types of habit. One was the outcome based and one's identity based, I think. So instead of being like, oh, I want to lose 10 kgs of weight or fat, instead of saying like, I want to be healthy, that is a goal. I want to be a healthy person, I want to be an athlete. That is way more, because once you lose that 10 kg, then what? And I've noticed whenever I've had outcome-based goals, I get to the outcome and then I go back to my old ways. And that's what happens with the dieting thing.
Yeah.
Like with the dieting, like in the past, like until I learned the hard way with carnivore diet to stop my toxic relationship with food. In the past, I would like go on extreme diets. I would lose a lot of fat. But because I had restricted myself so much that when I would reach my weight goal, then I was become a glutton again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, that's such a natural response from your body, because it has been restricted. So it's like, right, okay, we've been deprived of all these calories, these food groups. We need to rectify this in some way. So it's very, very natural for your body to respond that way. And in fact, one of the big learning curves that I found with intuitive eating is like, oh God, great, my body's working well. That's so good it's doing that, because it's actually what it's supposed to be doing. It's supposed to be keeping me in balance. It's supposed to be sending these cravings, because it's not getting what it needs. So I think that's a really good learning, I think, in it all. Yeah.
Another question I had was about the fitness culture. We see on Instagram unrealistic bodies, even with the male influencers and fitness, like massive biceps, and they're not healthy, it's just all steroids. They couldn't run for 2 minutes. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so from my background of really obviously believing in intuitive eating, having Photoshop people in front of you, obviously very much visual, then that can very much disconnect you from eating intuitively. Because if you're it obviously, and then people that are doing that, they often kind of say, oh, you should be eating this way, you should be doing this kind of thing. And again, if that's not right for you, if it's like I always say, no plan or no diet plan can actually tell you how hungry or full you are or what food you want in that moment. And I think if you're connecting to your intuition, but actually that's not what the plan says, and it's not going to get you to that, whatever that vision is, then you might think, oh, it's not right, but but it is. But you're right. And I think it can be very tricky, because I started dieting as a result of that thing. Like, I was exposed to so many magazines, photoshopped this kind of thin ideal, that thin was like more successful, more healthy, more attractive. So I was like, right. And then obviously, we're exposed to so many diets every day, and it's not going anywhere. So that started my dieting journey. So really for me, it wasn't good. But then where I am today, it's actually led me to this. So I think the journey has a meaning, really, in a way, do you know? But yeah, I think even to be aware that these images are photoshopped is a really good starting point, because then you can kind of start to, I suppose, have a different perspective, do you know?
Yeah. And just because people look good in their Photoshop pictures doesn't mean they're actually experts on fitness advice or nutrition advice.
It's so true.
Like, I listened to this guy who aesthetically looks good, but he encouraged like the calorie, bulk, and then not bulking, like bulking season and then cutting season. Man, that's one of the worst things I've done.
Really?
It's horrible on the body.
I bet it didn't feel good.
It's so, it's like I feel horrible about myself. I'm stuffing myself unnecessarily. I get big, and then I'm like, oh, and I have to lose all of this. Like, and then it's such a endless cycle. I don't know, have 2-inch bigger biceps at the cost of feeling depressed.
Yes, I know. It can be, really, really challenging. And as I was saying earlier about our natural set point weight, we've got this genetic set point weight that can be affected by obviously our genetics. And then all of we're trying to change this, and our body's like, what is happening? I just want to be here. This is where I'm naturally wanting to be. And it's like, it's funny, especially I've noticed, with women, like in different, even you look back at the different generations, sometimes it's like they want women to have like the thigh gap, and then it's like, okay, now it's the big bum, and then it's like the thin waist, and it's like, I always think, gosh, our bodies are like, can I just be like where I want to be, rather than trying to be these different things, do you know? So it's really, I think it's really, as I say, awareness is key, because I think you can really get sucked into it. It's very powerful, isn't it? It's everywhere.
I think social media is just so dangerous for young women. But like you said, even before social media, there were these things where women had to fit a particular body type. But do you think in your profession, there's an increase now of people who are chasing the aesthetic, or are people more health conscious now?
That's a good question. I think it's definitely still there, and I don't think it's going anywhere. But at the same time, I do feel there's more of a health focus as well, like running alongside it, which is great. But like I said, because it's everywhere, absolutely everywhere, I think it's very easy to get sucked in, especially that vulnerable age, that adolescence. I mean, that's when that's when I started the journey, really. And it's a very vulnerable age, I think, at that time. So I think it's still there, but I do think it's really good that we're seeing a more health focus alongside it.
I think that's what I've seen as well, just from being on social media. Now people are more, like you said, there is still that I want a six-pack, or for girls they want a particular body as well, but there is now also more, I just want to be healthy too. I want to live a good life. I think sometimes going on that cycle like I did actually brings you to, okay, I don't want that. So even sometimes going through it can be really difficult, but it does bring you to a really, I suppose, positive place, And I think people are now more aware of the wider benefits of health and exercise. Like, people know if you're physically healthy, in most cases, you're more likely to be mentally healthy as well. So I think that's been a massive driving factor in getting more people to be like more active and not just care solely about how they look. It's
a really good point, actually. And if I kind of sway back to the weight thing, about not all kind of slim people in slimmer bodies are actually healthy. I mean, I wouldn't say when I was dieting, although my body might have been slim, like I was probably at my unhealthiest I've been. So I think just using weight and vision as okay, they're healthy, it can be really, really misleading. So I think that's really always important to know.
100%. Like I can relate to that too. When I was on carnivore diet, that was the best I looked, right?
Yeah.
But I would get on like a heavy bag boxing and I would be tired after 2 minutes. I'm like, I got no performance. What is this all for?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Well, what's the point?
So you're not feeling good about it. And it was interesting earlier we talked about you post that diet. So afterwards, how did you feel after doing the carnivore diet with your relationship with food and your body?
I was like, I'm not going to go extreme again.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just going to listen to my body. I think naturally I became an intuitive eater.
Yeah.
That's when I heard this word, I was like, this sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Where you just listen to your body. This is good for me. Like, for example, currently I'm on keto diet.
Right.
But again, I'm open to other food. Like you told me to start having carbs before my boxing sessions. And that has massively improved my performance.
Yeah, okay.
So it's not like I'm not, just keto diet now. This is my new religion and nothing outside. So I don't even do that anymore.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have a bit of rice, things of that nature and flexible. I just listen to my body. I'm like, I can get in too much. Okay.
Yeah.
So it does help a lot. And I think as long as I eat clean food, there's not, even if you gain a kg here and there, it doesn't matter.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. That's cool.
Okay, so you've been a personal trainer for a very long time.
Yes.
Could you just tell us a little bit about that journey and what some of the challenges were coming up as a personal trainer?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So it's about 13 years now. I've been a qualified personal trainer and in the fitness industry. I would say I started on the gym floor. So I started working in a gym straight away, which was I think the best experience because I was exposed to so many different clients, so many different abilities. I think it's such a great place to start. And I think one of the things I learned straight away, and one of the biggest challenges I think is, it depends how you're coming into it, but for me, I was working in a gym. So I was doing, I suppose you could say, antisocial hours, 6 o'clock in the morning till 1 o'clock in the afternoon, or it might be like 1 till 10. So you're always doing that kind of morning, evening shifts. And then, so I was on the gym floor, but I was also building my one-to-one client base on the side. So there would be times where I'd be in for 6, work till 1:30, do my own training, and then work with one-to-one clients in the evening. So it quickly became very long days. And there was one specific time where I definitely was very close to reaching burnout because the days were just so long. And because there weren't very social hours, I was kind of missing out on kind of social things with family and friends, and also building up my client base on the side. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges in a personal trainer, because you often as well, you maybe work with lots of clients that are 9 to 5 workers. So you're either doing first thing in the morning or in the evening or weekends. So it's really kind of building that balance in. And I think what really helped me, and I suppose advise new personal trainers to do, is spend a bit of time first working with lots of different clients, lots of different goals, lots of different abilities. I think it's one of the best things to do before you even start thinking about, like, say, if you're self-employed, website, name, message. I think really dedicating a bit of time to just working with lots of clients, because that's what I did. And then very quickly you start to learn, okay, they're the kind of clients I want to work with. And then I think the experience is so good then. It's both so positive for the trainer and for the client, because you're really working with who you want to work with, and you can get the best results from. And then by doing that, then you can start to create your message, your site, all your content comes. And I think, obviously a challenge for personal trainers can be showing how you're different to other personal trainers. But once you find your ideal client, your niche, it does become easier, because then you're just so focused on your space, your client, and your content or your messaging becomes really clear. So I think it's really worth doing that. It can be busy, it can be quite challenging at the start, but really committing to working with as many people as you can, just to find who you really are comfortable working with and can work best with, really. So yeah.
What are the biggest challenges that come with it?
Yeah, so I think avoiding burnout. So I think it's trying to create the balance in your life. So you're particularly if you're self-employed, so trying to find a schedule that works for you. You're working with your clients, the clients you want to work with, and creating that balance, and with your own training as well, trying to maintain that. So quite a lot to think about. Being self-employed too, as a personal trainer, you obviously got to be open that your income won't be as predictable as, say, like a 9-to-5 job. So it's being aware of that. I think although it's tricky at the start, I would always say, if you can, maybe work part-time in a job and then maybe build your personal training business or client base on the side, because then you're not putting lots of pressure on yourself to make that be your main income stream. So it's almost like building that, if you can, at the start together, and then eventually going full-time personal trainer. I think that's a good way to kind of overcome that challenge of income. And I think it can be, like I mentioned before, I think it can be a challenge in that finding who you do want to work with and who is your niche. That can be quite tricky, and sometimes you might swap and change. But I think if you really can get that, it becomes so much easier, and it becomes really, really enjoyable. And then you're in it for the long run then. Yeah, once you get that kind of sweet spot between you and the trainer. Yeah.
And then how can someone be a good personal trainer?
Yeah, okay. I think there's a couple of things here. I noticed, I suppose, when I worked on the gym floor, I think really being approachable, friendly, I think that's always goes a long way, particularly in the gym environment. But I think it's creating a safe, like non-judgmental space for people to exercise in. Because I think what I noticed and learned really quickly is that actually, say, hiring a trainer or starting exercise can be really a massive step for a lot of people and very daunting. So I think if you can really make it a safe space, not judging it in any way, it can really be a positive experience for the client. I think another thing is being able to adapt to your clients. I think it's so important, because I think I've learned in the past, I may have, say, for example, planned out a specific session for the client that day. The client comes in, they're exhausted. They might have been up all night with a child, or they've just had worked overtime, or they've got like a stiff back. And I'm like, right, that's not going to happen. Let's adapt. Let's see what needs to work for you today. And another thing I've noticed as well is that I suppose people might see that working with a trainer, I'm going to work really hard every time I have a personal trainer. But, again, this I've noticed can create a bit of a barrier too. So if you feel like you need to work really hard every time, but actually someday you think, oh God, I don't feel like it today. I always say, come in, we'll do something, we'll adapt, we'll just really reduce the intensity. It might be we have a chat. Just being really, really flexible, I think, is so important, because it's really focusing on the client experience all the time rather than maybe what you think they should be doing. Yeah. So client-led as much as you can.
And then what makes someone a good client?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, I suppose it focuses a bit more on who I love working with. And I think it's, when I look at my clients, they're all, really reliable, really friendly. I think I can call a lot of them my friends now. I mean, like, talk for guys, I feel like part of the family. So you do really create that relationship. And I think sometimes you know as soon as you meet a client, like, this is going to work well. It's almost like it's not something that's said. You can just feel that's a really good positive connection. But yeah, clients that I suppose it touches a little bit on the weight loss thing, because I'm really passionate about kind of guiding people away from it. I think if clients are open, for me, if they're open to really seeing food and nutrition, movement as a long-term part of their life, so they really get that. I love working with clients like that. That's for me. Yeah. So it's not like a very short-term fix. It's a real, like, long-term vision for them. That's for me.
What are some of, like, the challenges you face with clients that, let's say if they have unrealistic goals, things of that nature, how do you overcome it?
Yeah, I would bring it back to, again, I'd definitely focus on why they're doing it. I've adapted, to be honest with you, with some clients that actually they might say, right, I can do one session a week, but they really do struggle even with that. So I just try and be as flexible as I can. It might be like, right, I'm going to do a couple of 10-minute recorded videos for you and send them to them, and then they might get that in before the session, before their working day. So I think just trying to, as much as I can, just work with their challenges and trying to be as flexible as I can. So I'd say that's the biggest thing, really. And, you know, coming from, I suppose, because I've been in the fitness industry for quite a long time now and been active myself and come across a lot of challenges myself in food and exercise and trying to fit things in, I just try and really resonate with them and understand and kind of come from that point of view. Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about that fitness journey that you had with Rechal's parents, as you mentioned before?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, yeah, Tribole so we were introduced, it's about 10 years ago now. And yeah, so Tribole obviously came to me. She wanted to improve her fitness levels. She did want to lose some weight, but she also had a really challenging back issue.
She's also had osteoporosis.
Yeah, that was really affecting her day-to-day life. So we really had to start slowly with Tribole, and it was very, very new to her. Like, she hadn't done any of that kind of exercise before. So we brought in her physio exercises into each session, and we just took it so slowly, really made it really suit her time, her availability, and gradually, once you start it, it doesn't take long for you to start to feel the benefits. And she was so patient, and I'm really grateful for both Tribole and Zealand, because it was so new for them, but they really trusted me in like what I was suggesting for them to do, and they did everything I said, and they're just so committed to it. And I think it's been a real pleasure, because they really are reaping the rewards now, and I think it really seems like it's such a long-term part of their life. Like, this is they really get it. So that's a really lovely place to be. So I've been working with Tribole for 10 years, and then Zudan's been consistently now for the last year, and he has absolutely got the exercising in between sessions absolutely spot on. So like, we'll see him once a week, and he every other day he is like, I know it's going to be done. And you can see that, because every week I can just see he's getting fitter, and I was like, there's no way he'd be getting that fit if he didn't do anything in between the sessions. It's lovely to see he's so committed and really, really seeing and feeling the benefits himself.
I've seen a massive difference in him. His aura, the way he carries himself. Yeah. He looks and feels 10 years younger, if not more.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, and you know, recently he did one of those tests. He lost 5 kg of fat and gained 2 kg of muscle.
I know.
Which is so impressive.
Good. Yeah, it's so good. I was saying earlier, one of the best things, he just kind of said it to me in passing conversation, but it was probably about after 6 months after he'd really committed to this. And he'd been away, he'd travelled somewhere, and I remember him coming back saying, I felt so strong lifting my suitcases. And he just said it in passing, and I was like, that's so good, because it's just so nice to do something in your everyday life. Obviously, travel, he'll be doing a lot. That's what I think, that's such a great motivator. That's what's going to keep you going, do you know?
Yeah, and just healthy living, like, as well, longer life, healthier, the quality of life.
Yeah.
Like, my mom and my dad had a lot of like health issues before, you know, they were training with you consistently, like, you know, especially my dad as well. And I told them, I was like, 80-90% of your problems are literally caused because of bad diet and not working out. And honestly, like, I barely see them getting ill now, which is incredible.
It's so good to see, isn't it? Definitely. Because I think what's come with that is, and what often happens is when you start moving, then you do naturally start to eat, you know, kind of more whole foods, more kind of like more nutritious foods. So I think it kind of comes hand in hand, almost like naturally, without it being like, I need to, do you know?
Yeah. It's like you do a good workout, you don't want to ruin it with bad food now.
Yeah, it's like your body's like, oh yeah, that's what I want. Just some good, nutritious foods. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah.
We've spoke about a lot today. What do you think, for the people watching, if they could take one thing away from this podcast, what is the most important thing that you would say to them?
Oh, there's so many. I'll try and narrow it down. I think it comes back to my intuitive eating background, I suppose. But I think enjoyment is such a big factor in everything. So in food, are you enjoying the food? Is it satisfying you? If you're not, it's going to be quite tricky to maintain it. Are you enjoying movement? if you're not, that's going to be really hard to maintain it. So I think, you know, we all absolutely deserve to enjoy life, and food and movement can absolutely be a part of that. It really doesn't have to feel like a punishment, a chore. It can absolutely be a really nice, positive, pleasurable part of your life, I think. So yeah, I'm going to go with enjoyment.
That's a good answer.
I really like.
Do you want to ask the last question?
Yeah, it's such a morbid question. We might have to change it, but we'll go for it. What would you want written on your tombstone?
Oh, that's a really good question. So would this be like about me, or just like a quote, or
It would be anything.
Mostly we say about you, but whatever you want, it can be.
Oh God, that is a really good question. I've never thought about this before. So just a quote on my tombstone. I'm gonna go for something I probably come back to a lot, and it's everything happens for a reason. I think I'm gonna go for that, because I feel like I come back to that quite a bit in my day-to-day life. Do you know, like if things don't go as you expected, I just think, this is happening for a reason. There's a reason why this has come to me, and it just helps me, deal with it. So I think I'm going to go for that.
That's beautiful.
Amazing.
I like it.
Thank you for joining us on the podcast and teaching us quite a lot, to be fair.
Oh.
It was a pleasure speaking to you.
No,
Yeah,
you're more than welcome.
And thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you for watching, guys. All the best.